Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. It depends on wherever you are at this moment. First of all, let me welcome all of you to our Asia Clean Energy Forum 2022, and also to our session, which is renewable energy integration in South Asia. So I would like to welcome all of you to our session, and thank you for taking your time out to participate in this important session. My name is Jeevan Acharya. I'm the Principal Energy Specialist in ADV South Asia Energy Division, and I will also be your moderator for today's session. We have lined up very good speakers today who will be sharing their experiences and some thought-provoking views on what are the issues and challenges in RE integration in South Asia, and what can we learn from the experiences within the region and also outside. And we will also have a panel discussion afterwards, where we'll be also asking kind of a difficult questions to our panelists to get their views as well. And we are also very pleased that Dr. Ajay Mathur, who is the Director General of International Solar Alliance, has also agreed to give a keynote speech before we start our session. But before that, I would like to request Mr. Kaoru Ogino, who is our officer in charge for South Asia Energy Division, to give his welcome remarks. So Ogino-san, over to you.
Thank you, Jeevan. Distinguished speakers and a member of our Energy Committee, and also the colleagues and the friends. So ladies and gentlemen, so good afternoon and good morning. I welcome all of you to the Asian Clean Energy Forum 2022. As you are aware, this year's ACF aims to support developing countries in the Asia and the Pacific toward some specific goals. First is to fulfill their NDCs and the net zero targets by mid-century through the innovative solution in the technology, finance, and policy to address the emerging energy transitional challenges. The second is to share the best practices that highlight multi-sectoral benefits of the clean energy to contribute to attaining the SDGs. Third is to feature and create opportunities for the collaboration among all of the stakeholders toward the decarbonization programs. This session will focus on the region of the South Asia. Regional sessions intend to showcase the ADB's regional department's experiences and lessons learned in the developing and the implementing project and the programs for the clean energy transition. For South Asia, we have highlighted renewable energy integration for the discussion. South Asia countries are now witnessing paradigm shift in the energy sector, which is being driven by increased viability of the distributed renewable energy sources and technological commercialization through the electric vehicles, battery storage systems, and green hydrogen production, and increasing the consumer centricity of the utilities driven by the two-way power flows. So more renewable energy requires a greater planning and the more resilient systems to effectively integrate the variable nature of the renewable energy generation. Battery storage and the green hydrogen may act as an enabler for the integration of the higher share of the renewable energy. However, most of these technologies are still in the early stage of their transition toward a clean and a smart energy future. They are seeking the viable and innovative solutions to accelerate on this path. Therefore, it is important to promote the knowledge sharing of the planning and the implementation experiences as a greater learning opportunities across the stakeholders, including the governments, regulators, utilities, technological providers, private sector, research organization, and development partners, among others. The partnership is even more critical than before. In South Asian countries, we have many examples of the renewable energy projects like the off-grid solarization, decentralized energy generation, and hybrid renewable energy parks. This transformation should bring the structural changes to sustain energy transition. I'm sure these will be further discussed during today's session. We can also see the case presentation on the green hydrogen technology model in the Republic of Korea. I want to take these opportunities to reiterate ADB's strong commitment and support to our developing member countries in their efforts to increase the renewable energy share toward the net zero targets, and to support them through the sustainable solutions in the integration of the renewable energy through our technical assistance, investment, and knowledge sharing. We have a pipeline of about $1 billion to $1.5 billion a year for the South Asia's energy sector operations. In that sense, that we also want you to give us your feedback and inputs on where and how ADB support can be best utilized to achieve the zero transition targets in the energy sector for the future. I wish everyone a successful session ahead. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Ogino-san, for giving that perspective from ADB side in terms of what ADB is doing and will be able to do and support our developing member countries in South Asia, particularly in this session, but of course in other regions as well. So now moving on to our program, we want to request our keynote speaker, Dr. Ajay Mathur, for giving his keynote speech. I noted that there is some kind of a technical glitch there. I don't know, Dr. Mathur, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me as well?
Oh, it's perfect, sir. Thank you so much for joining this. This is a kind of a challenge or a beauty of this online sessions as well. But it's good that you're able to join us on time. So, colleagues, Dr. Mathur, I think probably he doesn't need an introduction, but I have to do my part to introduce him. So he's the Director General of International Solar Alliance. He has a lot of experience in promoting renewable energy and, of course, working with the government and also with the development partners in this area for a long time. And ADB has a very strong collaboration and partnership with the International Solar Alliance. And there's a lot of things that we are doing and we plan to do. And then we have requested him to give us his keynote speech for this session, especially looking at, of course, the RE integration is important, but of course, looking at also on the financing side of it and what ISA is doing, and of course, with us and also with other development partners. So, Dr. Mathur, over to you for your keynote speech, please.
Thank you very much, Jeevan. I am delighted to be here with all of you. And the Asian Clean Energy Forum, which has proven to be such a strong forum for all of us who are interested in promoting renewables to get together. As we move ahead, we are in a time where renewable energy in general and solar in particular are growing in leaps and bounds. For example, last year in 2021, despite the fact that the world was battling COVID, there was something of the order of $200 billion worth of investment in the solar field alone. If you add other renewables also, the total amount of investment was well over $400 billion. This tells, and by the way, in fossil fuels, it was something of the order of about 60 or 70 billion in this year. So more than anything else, it tells us the capabilities that we have in enabling this change and the kind of interest that we are getting in making this change happen. Now, as we go ahead, the challenge becomes how do we ensure that this growth keeps happening? And not only does this growth keep happening, it is ultimately in the interest of the countries, of the users, and particularly of the policymakers and regulators. So there are two kinds of challenges that we face. The first is what I may say is, in a sense, the post-facto challenge. Once you have the renewables in place, how do you ensure that they are ready to provide the kind of electricity that we need? That means 24 hours a day, and that it is provided as and when people switch on their lights, fans, air conditioners, motors, etc. There is a challenge because most of the renewables that we are today pushing, whether it is solar or wind, are largely variable sources of energy, where electricity is available when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. Consequently, what happens when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing? And there, what we are talking of is storage. Because most of our countries have now come to a point where we have an adequate amount of reserves. And therefore, the first point that the grid that faces with the grid operators and is the challenge in renewable energy integration is to work the system so that the solar and wind is available when the sun is shining, when the wind is blowing during the day and at times in the night. And when it is not, we move to fossil fuels. So the fossil fuels, instead of becoming the first option, in a sense, become the second option. This is not easy. It requires a series of grid integration measures, including in the beginning, the human capabilities to be able to switch on and switch off as solar comes on and off, as wind comes on and off. But automation is here. We already have it. The greatest challenge that we have is in putting an order of merit, the order priorities into these systems. Many a times, the challenge is the way in which contracts are written, and therefore what the effective prices that we face are very different from the real prices that we face. And that often, therefore, means that regulatory changes are needed in order to make effective prices the prices that we face in the regulatory world as well. This is an ongoing challenge, and in different countries in the Asian region, they are at different levels of being addressed. Everybody is aware of it. I would now like to move to the second part, Jeevan, which is looking at not the physical post-facto part, but in a sense the pre-installation part. And that is, how do I get enough resources, enough financial resources to be able to invest in renewables? You know, of the total amount of that $200 billion which came into the solar sector in 2021, something of the order of about 10 or 11% or so went into non-China Asia. That's it. Now, this is the region where energy is growing. This is the region where there is a great demand for new sources of energy. And so it surprised us that the amount of resources that were coming in were relatively limited. So we went out and talked to a huge number of investors. I think, if I'm not wrong, my colleagues will tell me that we spoke to about 180 investors. And one of the things that came out was that many investors were not sure whether they would get their returns. The second issue that they were sure of was whether the power purchase agreements, whether the various economic infrastructure that is needed for renewable energy to function is in place or not. We saw this as financial risk, and therefore said that what is most important to draw in money is to ensure that financial risks are addressed. And how do we address financial risk? This is where our partnership, in partnership with the Asian Development Bank, we are looking at jointly developing a blended finance facility, which provides us with Let me, for the sake of simplicity, say three buckets. One is a bucket, the most important bucket is the money that is there for risk mitigation. So in some country, it may be necessary to have a payment guarantee facility. In some other country, it may be necessary to have a first loss guarantee facility. The kinds of investments that make it more, that gives investors confidence to invest in that. So that's one bucket. But as we go on, we will need a second project, we need a fifth project, we will need 100th project. We need local capacity to produce this. Now, in many of our countries, we have that capacity, but in many we don't. Now, this is not just the capacity to write projects. This is not just the capacity to run projects. It's also in the banking sector to look at solar proposals, to review them, and to be able to provide at least the debt that is needed. We need also to work with policymakers and regulators so that we can bring in the kinds of regulations that these variable sources of energy can be brought in, the kinds of things that I addressed in the first part of this message. When we look at all of this together, we are therefore looking at a risk mitigation facility, a readiness facility, and the third is an investment facility. Now, we want to crowd in investment. So we don't want the investment facility to be very large, but adequate so that the blended finance facility puts in its own skin in the game as well, not just the risk mitigation facility. What we hope is that this creates in the Asian region the kind of comfort that is needed for us to move ahead. With Asia, we are working with ADB to make this happen. We hope that by sometime early next year, we will be in the phase where we can start discussing this facility with one of you. We are at that point now with a very similar facility that we are designing for Africa, where the discussions with the African beneficiaries on the one hand and the various people who will put in their money in the risk mitigation facility on the other hand is going on as we speak. But what I want to suggest is that this is an area in which we are learning, together. We are learning of the kinds of challenges that we face, and therefore we come up with instruments to address those challenges as they come. I want to again thank ADB for inviting me to this session, and more importantly, I want to thank all of you for the patient hearing, and more importantly, for the interest in pushing renewables in general and solar in particular. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, Jeevan.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur, for giving us that whole perspective of what are the challenges right from the beginning all the way up to the blended finance concept and rationale there. I think it's this very exciting time that we're working together in developing such a concept, which will be very, very useful for our countries. And I also really like that idea that the concept is not having a one solution that will fit in everywhere. But what is important is to have this menu of options available for a country or the market, which will be needing those rather than coming up with one solution. That's very good. So, Dr. Mathur, thank you so much for your remarks. I really appreciate, and I hope that you will be available later on for our panel discussion. I'm sure there will be some questions as well from the other colleagues there. So now I would like to move on to our presentation from four panelists and speakers. What we have done is that we have requested them to make maybe 7-8 minutes of a short presentation to share their presentation or their interventions on their background and their areas of expertise. And after that, we'll open the floor for question and answer and also some panel discussion as well. And we have 4 speakers today in this session, in this part. And now I would like to first invite Anvesha Thakur. She is a partner and lead renewable energy transition and then co-lead for Global Decarbonization Hub in the KPMG, India. And then she has also been working very closely with ADB and of course with other development partners, especially in India on this just transition and promoting renewable renewable energy as well. And she has a lot of experience in this space as well. So Anvisa, over to you, please.
Thanks, Jeevan. And in the interest of time, I'm going to very quickly share my presentation. And hello, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity for presenting on this great platform. So of course, Dr. Ajay Mathur has laid the foundation and the grounds very well for what are the challenges and some of the really good solutions around what needs to be done to promote renewable energy and its integration. I will just very quickly get into some of the aspects of why this problem is manifesting itself. And also what are some of the challenges we are seeing, and more importantly, what are some of the solutions that we can look at. As Dr. Jay Mathur said, that the amount of investments and the amount of focus that is there on renewable energy today around the world is mind-boggling. In the last decade alone, there has been a doubling of capacities from 1.3 gigawatts, 1,330 gigawatts to almost 3,000 gigawatts. But this is in the last decade. Going forward, I would see this space galloping like never before. And in fact, as IRENA projects, we are likely to see the share of renewable energy in select countries, especially such as China, India, being more than 90% by 2050. So that is the extent of renewable energy penetration that we are likely to see going forward. And that increases a host of issues and brings in a host of challenges that we are beginning to see in quite a few countries, and these problems will manifest themselves as we move forward. First and foremost is the ability of the system operator to manage the grid. As we know, renewable energy is both intermittent and as well as variable. So what happens is that the ability to forecast how renewable energy is going to come in and match the loads becomes an enormous challenge for the grid operator. And also there is a lack of historic data. So unless we have the data, we have a lower ability to be able to perform data analytics and to be able to forecast accurately when is generation going to come so that we can manage the loads better. Additionally, most of our South Asian economies are built on coal fleets. There's typically a lot of inflexibility associated with these fleets. So the ability of such power systems to flex or to ramp down, ramp up, go to technical minimums is very weak. That inhibits the ability of the power system to absorb the high amounts of renewable energy coming in. And there are often not enough SOPs which can give guidance to system operators for managing such coal fleets. There are also a lack of grid codes to ensure that the VRE plants are supported for system reliability. Additionally, if we look at the existing assets, often if wind and solar are coming in, we are forced to back down our existing assets such as the coal assets. There are implications on station heat rates, there are implications on auxiliary consumptions that increases the variable charges of these stations. This has economic consequences, not only for the generators, but for the system by itself. Even the transmission assets are often subutilized because what happens is that renewable energy comes in certain hours. It is not round the clock. So if we build in transmission systems to cater to the peak, when the peak renewable energy is coming in, often there is a massive underutilization during off-peak hours. So how do we build the transmission assets optimally? That becomes another challenge. In countries such as India, we've seen that in solar hours, the market prices, if you are buying from, exchanges such as IEX, are typically lower than in hours where solar is not coming in. So what happens that if load-serving entities such as utilities need to buy power in non-solar hours, this becomes very expensive. This affects the economics of the dispatch. It affects their, financials, and this becomes a huge challenge as well with high amounts of renewable energy coming in. Finally, from the generator perspective, from the renewable energy generator perspective, the risk of curtailment also becomes very high, especially if there is inability of the system to manage the renewable energy that is coming in or to store the renewable energy that is coming in. So this affects the utilization of these projects. It results in inefficiencies, lower ROIs, which in turn can affect their financing. To address these problems, the countries need to look at frameworks for renewable energy integration. Typically, if I categorize the frameworks or the solutions for renewable energy integration, I would put it in three buckets. First is ensuring power system flexibility. Second is to looking at digital solutions to be able to better forecast both the resources as well as the loads and to be able to match these better. Third is to deepen the power markets to enable better renewable energy integration. If I'm talking about the first bucket, which is ensuring power system flexibility, how can this be done? First of all, we need to make sure that our existing fleets are flexible. For instance, if an economy is dependent on coal fleets, how can we bring the technical minimum down? Typically, they operate at 55% technical minimum, in countries such as India. How do we enable them to lower to lesser technical minimum so more renewable energy can come in? How do we enable a scale up of their ramp up, ramp down requirements? Secondly, bringing in storage such as battery storages, in pump storage to enable better load, better generation shifting. So when renewable energy comes in a time that is not required, how do we store it and shift it to a peak demand period, which enables a better integration of renewable energy, which enables a higher scale up of renewable energy. Smart grids are again very important to be able to assess how the customer is consuming their electricity and also enable solutions such as demand response so that the consumer itself can be a participant in building flexibility into the power systems. On the digital solution side, first of all, data needs to be available. So there has to be an attempt to gather the data, maintain the repository of this data, and then to perform analytics on this data. This analytics has to be performed for better forecasting of renewables. It has to be performed for better forecasting of the load itself so that we can also assess when is demand going to come in and to be able to meet that demand through various resources. We need to have models such as unit commitment modeling, which enables better dispatch while considering technical constraints of the system. So all these become requirements to not only be able to better perform data analytics to manage the loads as well as the generation, but also to automate the systems, as Dr. Ajay Mathur said, which becomes extremely important when we are looking at variable resources such as renewable energy. Lastly, deepening the power markets itself can be a very important tool for renewable energy integration. In India, we've seen the development of real-time markets, which enables both the load-serving entities as well as generators to be able to respond on almost a real-time basis on the power either supply or the demand variations. So almost 1 hour ahead of dispatch, we can correct our positions, whether it is the demand positions or the supply positions. So this reduces the spillage of renewable energy, and it also reduces the need for having load shedding to balance the loads. So real-time markets becomes a very important tool to be able to integrate the renewable energy systems over there. Having wider balancing areas. Let's not restrict the whole scheduling operating to limited areas. If we create wider balancing areas, we'll have the ability to average out the resource potential of renewables as well as average out the demand variation over a larger area. So this enables efficiency and also brings down the costs of renewable energy integration. A related topic is stronger interconnections. If regions as well as countries can be interconnected, it has the ability to transmit renewables and disperse it over a larger area and enables a bigger scale up of renewable energy and in fact can cater to regions which are deficient in renewable energy by bringing it from a renewable energy rich area. Ancillary services also becomes extremely important for maintaining grid stability as well as grid reliability, because both the frequency of the grid as well as the voltage of the grid needs to be managed. So how do we develop the ancillary market in a country so that the impact of renewable energy in the grid in terms of the grid instability is managed? So that becomes an extremely important tool. Having an REC mechanism which enables trading of certificates, of green certificates, becomes very important because it gives the signals to set up the green capacities and to transfer the green credits to people who may need it vis-a-vis people who do not need it or consumers who do not need it today. Having capacity markets or resource adequacy so that the system can cater to all the requirements of the consumers without any need for outages, it becomes extremely important, which means that the market needs to be able to provide signals for development of capacity, for dispatch on demand, for the flexibility of such capacity, and for it to be locally present as well, so that in case the transmission connections are not available, there are local capacities that are available to serve the load. So all of these become extremely important tools. And of course, challenges, as Dr. Mathur said, remain on the investment side, availability of capital investments, the remuneration, as well as the regulations framework, and of course, the transmission capacity itself, which is extremely important that we have a robust transmission capacity to be able to manage all this variability. So regulations, digital tools, transmission capacity, financing. This becomes extremely important holistically to manage the renewable energy integration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anvesa, for giving us that good perspective in terms of what are the issue challenges and what are the ways that we can make this RE integration possible. I mean, of course, we'll have a lot of questions from the participants, and I also have a few questions, but we'll do that one later on. I also take the opportunity to invite our participants. If you have any questions and thoughts, please don't hesitate. Just raise it in your chat box, and then we'll bring it back to the discussion later on as well. So now moving on to our next speaker is Mr. Sim Jong Myong. I hope that I pronounce it correctly. He's a senior manager, Energy Solution Team, Global Business Management Department of KEPCO in Korea. So over to you, please. Mr. Sim, you can start. You are on mute now.
Thank you very much for organizing this session. I will share my screen. It's good. Sorry. Okay. Is it okay? Shall we start?
You can start, but can you make it as a, let's say, full screen view?
Sorry.
Yeah, now it's good. Please go ahead.
Oh.
Okay. No, now it's off again.
Oh, sorry. I heard that we don't have much time. I feel hurry. Okay.
No, it's okay. Please go ahead. Now it's all good.
Okay. My name is Sim Jong-myung, a senior manager of Energy Solution Team, and I'm personally in charge of the project management for overseas project in KEPCO. Now I will make a brief presentation about the hydrogen strategy of KEPCO to achieve the national carbon neutrality policy by 2015. Before I start my presentation, I would like to introduce KEPCO first. Okay. As you may know, KEPCO is the largest state-run power company Korea, since the government owns 51% of our share. In addition, KEPCO carrying out 100% of transmission and distribution business, and also we have 61.5% of power generation with 6 subsidiaries, generation companies, and our capacity is about 83 gigawatt, which is one of the world top 10 power provider. However, in regards to the energy resources, the coal takes up about the 40%, and natural gas takes 22%. That means most of the energy resources comes from the thermal power, and then and they cause a lot of large amount of greenhouse effect gas emissions. The renewable energy is only 8.2%, but it will be the rise on the continuously. This is the current status of KEPCO's global business. We have 48 projects in 25 countries. The total installed capacity of KEPCO's global project is 28,000 megawatt. And 70% of them are thermal power project. The thermal power projects. We also have carrying out 6 grid business and so solution, 18 solution project in the world. I'm gonna skip the organization. Okay, now I will explain about KEPCO's strategy for the hydrogen ammonia. The last year, the government has decided to revise its NDC target to 40% from its previous goal of 20% to speed up its carbon neutrality target. The hydrogen and ammonia are considered as very effective way to achieve this goal. Because hydrogen atoms are in substances all around us from water, plant, and fossil fuel such as coal and oil. It can be turned into a clean fuel for our cars, sometimes the heat for our homes, and power for our industries. It just releases water, not greenhouse effect gases when it's consumed. That is the reason why many governments try to establish the policies to expedite the hydrogen industry and related systems. Furthermore, the global hydrogen market is expected to expand dramatically in the near future. As of today, almost 240 projects is announced across the world, and more and more projects are in the processing of developing. Among the various uses of hydrogen, demand is the highest in the power section, followed by industry, transport, and building section. The government tried to expand the hydrogen industry to achieve 2030 NDC implementation and the 2040 carbon neutrality goals. As a state-run utility company and the largest energy company in Korea, the KEPCO have to follow the government policy. However, it's just not for the following the government policy, but it's very promising new business opportunity to KEPCO itself. For more, okay. This is the whole value chain of hydrogen, which are production, conversion, transportation, storage, and utilization. KEPCO will concentrate in the green hydrogen and ammonia production project, not blue or gray. This slide shows master plan and strategy for the hydrogen. At first, KEPCO will develop the hydrogen and ammonia co-firing technology and the system by 2013. And then we will continuously increase the proportion of the co-firing rate by 2015. Second, we will elaborate the green, blue, and pink hydrogen and ammonia production technology and system also. This is the short-term timeline and action plan for the hydrogen and ammonia. We are working on 2 types of technology in parallel. Increase of ammonia, we will achieve 20% of ammonia co-firing for commercial the coal plants. As for the hydrogen co-firing in gas turbine, we will develop the 50% of hydrogen co-firing with natural gas technology in the 18 megawatt size turbine in 2023. And we will apply the technology to the more bigger the commercial gas turbine by 2028. This is the long-term timeline and action plan for the hydrogen ammonia. Finally, KEPCO will set up the framework with our generation subsidiaries for the ammonia and hydrogen co-firing to expedite the low carbon system in the power industry by 2015. This slide explains the KEPCO's strong point for hydrogen project. First, as one of the world's top-tier electric power provider, KEPCO is the experienced and very reliable partner. We have successfully developed the 42 global project, and also we are based on this experience and expertise. We are sure we can lead the global hydrogen market as well. Secondly, KEPCO and its five subsidiary generation company are one of the biggest off-taker of green hydrogen. As you can see in the table below, it is expected that the demand for the ammonia is as much as 11 million tons per year since 2013. As the demand for the hydrogen is expected to the 13.5 million tons since the 2015. Okay, this is all what I prepared. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Sim. So really appreciate you sharing KEPCO's experience, especially on the hydrogen side of it. As we all know, the hydrogen is getting so much popularity in the whole world right now. So I think countries are coming up with their own plan, policies, and demonstration projects. And we really hope that the cost of hydrogen will also go down significantly later on. By the way, International Solar Alliance is also organizing another session on hydrogen on Thursday evening, Manila time as well. So that may be also an opportunity for those of you interested in the hydrogen to go into the details there as well. In hydrogen, as we all know, that could be very, very useful in this RE integration work, especially when there is excess renewable energy can be used to generate hydrogen and can be stored and can be used later on as well. So now I want to take a slight change in our approach because now we heard Anvesa giving a kind of a framework of what and how this RE integration should be done. And we have also heard from Korean example of how KEPCO is doing it as well. But we also need to translate these kind of good ideas and then experiences into our South Asian country context. So we have two government officials, one from Maldives and another one from Nepal in this session today. So what I wanted to do is to request them during their presentation of what they are doing and what are the issues and challenges that they are facing. I think that will also be very helpful for us to see what can be done and how all development partners like ADB can also support in this endeavor. So now first I would like to invite Mr. Ahmad Ali. He is the Director General, Energy Department under the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Technology, Maldives. So Mr. Ahmad, over to you.
Thank you, Jeevan, and thank you everyone for joining this session. Is it clear to everyone, my screen?
Yes, we can see it, Mr. Ahmad. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, I will first of all give an introduction of an overview of our country. I think all of you know that we have 1,192 tropical islands, out of which 187 are inhabited islands. That means people are living in 187 islands, 1,005 are uninhabited, 159 islands we have tourist resorts. And if we look at the population, we have 500,000, roughly around 500,000 population, and we have a GDP per capita of 10,000. And our islands are scattered. Our islands are not connected. We have islands spread over 300 kilometers, and most of these islands are just a meter above the sea level. If we look at the governance structure of the power sector, we have, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Technology, and the Utility Regulatory Authority. And Ministry of Environment is responsible for making the policies, plans, and connect the country with the multilateral international bodies and also local bodies in developing the energy sector. Then the regulator is the Utility Regulatory Authority, and we have utility companies, mainly 3 companies. State Electric Company, which looks after the islands, roughly around 30 islands, which are at close proximity to the capital island Male, including the capital island. And MWSC is Male Water and Storage Company, which also produce electricity for water and storage needs of their islands, and also provide exclusively power in one of the inhabited island. And the next, Fenaka Corporation Limited, who provides utility services including electricity, water storage, waste management in the islands. 150 such islands they are providing services. And then we have the consumers. And if we look at the fuel imports, roughly around 10% of our GDP is spent on fuel import. Most of the fuel import, out of the 80% of the fuel import is diesel, and out of this 80% of the diesel imported, 60% is used for electricity generation. And we are almost entirely depending on imported fossil fuels, diesel, on meeting all our electricity needs. If we look at the inhabited islands, we have a total consumption of 704 gigawatt hour per year, and most of this is consumed in near the capital island Male. And if we include the tourist resorts, the 704 gigawatt hour will just be multiplied by 2. So it's like 1,500 gigawatt hour in total in entire country. And in order to reduce the dependency on imported fossil fuel and increase use of renewable energy and enhance energy efficiency, we have included in our strategic action plan some targets. One of such target is to increase renewable energy mix on the energy generation by 20% compared to the 2018 level. And as a result of that, our objectives to reduce the fuel consumption by 40 million liters and increase energy storage, reduce distribution losses, and implement renewable energy projects. In addition to that, we very recently we have come up with an objective of becoming net zero by 2030. So in order to achieve that objective, we are implementing projects in 3 different models. One is independent power producer model, and other one is public sector investment model and net metering. Under the
Mr. Ahmad, sorry to interrupt you in your flow, but your slides are not moving. Are you using those slides, or is it maybe you can put it under the screen? Yeah, now they're moving. You can also put it under the slide, so then we all can see. I saw that you have very nice slides there as well. Sorry to interrupt you. Please. Yeah.
Is it okay now? Can you see?
Okay, but it should move also as you present, right? So.
Yes, I think that must be some technical issue.
Yeah, okay. But please continue. Now it's okay. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, The one of such project we are implementing is assisted by the Asian Development Bank, preparing outer island for sustainable energy development. This project mainly focus on the public sector investments. The objective, the scope of the project is to install at least 21 megawatt of solar PV in the different islands. So far, we have completed installation in 50 islands. And installation in remaining 12 islands is ongoing, and by the end of the program we are expecting to have solar PV diesel battery hybrid systems in 160 islands. Then the other program which we have is ESPA program that is supported, implementation support is provided by the World Bank. And this project is mainly focused on the private sector investments, where the project scope is to install around 20 megawatt solar PV systems under PPS. So far, we have signed around 17 PPA for 17 megawatt, and there are some of these projects are up and running. But again, with these projects, we are just meeting part of our energy needs in these power needs, electricity needs in these islands. And there are some in recent projects also assisted by the World Bank for targeting into the private sector again, aiming to install 36 megawatt. Most of these works are under tendering stage now. And in addition to that, we also have a project. We are working with the ADB to attract private sector for installing renewable energy in the country. We are aiming to install 20 megawatt through the new project that we are working together with the Asian Development Bank, Assure. A new project name is Assure. So with that project, we will be installing 20 megawatt renewable solar hybrid plus battery storage and grid upgradation. To date, we have installed 36.5 megawatt of solar PV, which is not much. But again, if we look at our total peak of 400 megawatt, I think this is quite something. If we look at the challenges, you all know that Maldives have very small dispersed islands, and each island have its own generating and distribution facilities. These islands are not connected. Power systems are not connected. Each island have its own. So if we are to install solar PV, especially, we have to install on the roofs, mainly on the public roofs. And then the islands where we have land, we are installing on the land, and the islands where we don't have roofs and lands, we are going and installing on lagoons and on the ocean. But again, the main challenge here is when we go and survey the roofs of these islands are not properly designed for installing solar. That means not designed to have that much of height. So due to those, and also due to old age of the roofs, we get a very few number of roofs for solar installation without renovating those roofs. And again, the land, given the small size of these islands, and we don't have enough land on the islands, so we have to focus on the lagoon. Again, when we look at the lagoon and ocean installations, floating solar, yes, in some of the countries they do have floating solar facilities established, but it is again on the still water, lakes and rivers, but not on open sea. When we install on open sea, we face new challenges like corrosion erosion of the materials, and we have to, buy specialized materials for the solar installation on the ocean. So that is again a huge challenge for a country like Maldives, where we have to install these even on the lagoon or sea due to heat, and also due to humidity. It creates, different kind of challenges it gives to us. And having to, another challenge we face is that given the small size of these islands, during the initial assessment stage, if we select a site, and then when we go for installation, the island community would have another plan. Of course, they will be looking at the opportunity cost of having a solar PV system at that limited land versus having some other social development activities in that. So due to these reasons, we have to, change the site several times even after mobilizing to the island. And having poor electricity networks on the islands is again another challenge to us. Our electricity power systems of these islands have been evolved, so they have grid systems, power electricity networks of different sizes, and also different ages. The power system is not properly designed, so there are huge amount of grid loss, and the generators used in these islands are not properly sized. They have generators of different sizes and ages, so which is again reduce the efficiency of the generation. So through the projects which we are implementing with the assistance from ADB, we are properly sizing the generators and grid upgradation components we are doing. And the another challenge we are facing is the poor performance of the contractors. And it happens that we, even though we specify the specifications are provided on the tender documents, and sometimes it happens that we end up with the not the very high quality products. As a result, due to the humid hot climate of Maldives, these components start, especially the mounting structure and the ground mounting structure and other components which gets eroded and started rusting. And in addition to that, the some of the defects, when the project is completed, we find the defects, because that is those kind of defects and low quality materials get into the islands, because we do not have good knowledge on the products, and we, especially the battery energy storage and energy management systems, very new to us. And I think in the other countries, and also the manufacturers, they are designing these systems for very large grids, and they do not have also don't have much experience on controlling the systems using the small generators, and including a large amount of batteries, and these kind of these combinations they have not have experience in the past. So which brings a huge challenge to us. We need, actually, since we have ADB and institutions like International Solar Alliance, we would like to bring into their attention that countries like Maldives, we need their assistance in developing human resource, providing proper knowledge to these people who are working on these islands on the new technologies like battery energy storage, energy management systems, and also operation and maintenance of solar PV systems and other renewable energy systems. And then to develop bankable projects. That is also an area we need support from the institutions like ADB and other MDBs, and also institutions like International Solar Alliance, bringing finance to develop the renewable energy sector in the countries like Maldives, where we don't have enough scale. I mean, we have very small requirement, and for the investors, these kind of small installations may not be very attractive. But there has to be some way that we can make these small requirements either bundled it together and make it more attractive to the investors, or we have to work together. The institutions, MDBs, and the countries work together and find ways to increase interest of the investors to the system, solar PV or other renewable energy system in small island countries. So thank you. That is the all from my side. I will provide. I'm more than happy to provide answers to any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed, for giving that perspective from Maldives side of it. And it's you made a very good points about, and of course, funding is necessary and important, but at the same time, this human resource capacity strengthening is also a very, very important aspect of it. And you also made a very good point about the different market size. I mean, especially the battery manufacturers and others, they may consider a large system, whereas a country or the system like in Maldives, it may not fully fit in. But I think these are all good points there. I mean, we heard the story of a country where there are no mountains, but now let's move on to another country where there is no sea. So let's give that as another perspective. Now let me invite Dr. Madhu.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see my slides also.
Yeah, we can see it here, Dr. Adhikari. So I was just introducing you to make this presentation and bring in a perspective from Nepal as well. So we heard the story from Maldives, but now it's also important to see a perspective from Nepal in terms of how these RE integration related work have been done, and then what can be, what are the issues and challenges that you have faced there. And I don't know whether there was any problem in me communicating earlier. I wanted to thank Mr. Ahmad for his experiences and also the work that they have done, and then some of the challenges they are facing there. So, Madhusudanji, over to you.
Thank you, Jivanji. Thank you, Dr. Mathur, for the presentation, and also from other participants, especially from KPMG, and then from Green Hydrogen, also from Mr. Ahmed. As Jivanji mentioned, we are small developing countries. Our terrain is very typical. We are a mountainous country. We have a lot of hydropower potential, and then we also trying to generate, use local energy resources and produce and use in the local areas, because the transportation and access was a very big problem in the past. I will definitely bring a very small case study of a typical developing nation, not in a broader sense. It is a kind of a case study of Nepal. Still to talk about the total energy mix, Nepal is still using a lot of traditional fuel, and then also a big chunk of petroleum product and coal, mostly all imported from the abroad. In terms of energy, we have only 7% of the energy is coming from electricity. That is renewable and hydropower. But in terms of the access to electricity, we have a very big number achieved with a small percentage. From the national grid perspective, we have reached around 89%. And from any APC distributed system of grid, we have reached 4%. Altogether, 94% of the population is electrified. Still 6 to 7% to electrify. Especially in our case, the small renewables that was promoted by APC was used very much to catch up the grid, national grid. We had reached to quite a big percentage of population in the mountain with a pre-electrification solution from small renewables like micro hydro, pico hydro, and solar home system. In the first glance, we can say we reached to first 20% of the population with the renewables, but now around 16% is already overlapped by the grid. The grid is more aggressive nowadays, and remaining 4% from this. APC Alternative Energy Promotion Center was established in 1996. It has been given a mandate to do the use of energy resources in local level, especially the small hydro and all other renewables. Now we are also working on energy efficiency. We are working also in the carbon financing, and we are direct access entity to GCF. We have also done, we're doing one project with them. Also, we are readiness partner to GCF for the our national desired entity. Just to bring you some data here, we had promoted, we had very good support from the external development partner. And then we had worked on 18 different kind of small technologies. You can see the table giving numbers and the household served. So altogether, we reached to quite a big number of households with some kind of technologies. We have tried almost all kind of thing. As you can see, the list of the technologies are 18 technologies, and the population reaches around 3.5 million. This was in 25 years' time. So there were a lot of activities in small renewables, different technical aspects, modalities, and partnership with the different stakeholders. So this was a kind of list we could have disseminate to the global society, and then could try different options, small renewables, especially local use of resources and having transition to clean energy. Then we have developed a lot of policies. I think the rural energy policy was one which actually supported the whole bigger concept. But the renewable energy subsidy policy was kind of very instrumental. So we had this policy co-financing by the government and development partners and the people on the ground. It was largely very successful. The list I showed you has happened because of this policy, where the financing was kind of, in a modern term we call it blended finance, but it was a kind of partnership with all possible stakeholders, including the beneficiaries. We had developed many other things, and I think the Central Renewable Energy Fund is one concept where we had these development support and the government money put in a basket and use it for the overall development of the subsidy policy related technologies. In the other aspect, the biomass is the main source of energy coming. So we have developed this biomass energy technology strategy and national energy efficiency strategy, and also developed quite comprehensive this nationally determined contribution climate change policy, financial act to support rebate on tax and import on renewable energy technologies, and other technical guidelines like controlling or assuring the quality of the solar and other technologies. In terms of existing plan and all, we have very clearly been developing our renewable energy small technologies in our periodic plan, and the last periodic plan is 15th periodic plan, which actually want to integrate the sustainable development of modern energy through energy promotion, expansion, and kind of thing. We are very categorically defined targets like mini micro hydro in 5 years, 13 megawatt, solar energy 125 megawatt, wind energy 10 megawatt, domestic biogas 200,000, improved coke stove 500,000, waste to energy project 500 projects, a small and medium sized industry 2,000, a carbon project 2 more project. So these are the all very categorically defined targets in the periodic plan. Also, we have this nationally determined contribution NDC, quite ambitious but very well defined. So it's try to meet the Paris Agreement as a voluntary side. Sustainable energy development goal, especially on 7, we are working to achieve this by 2030. And also defined long-term strategy LTS for the decarbonization by 2045. In terms of this energy mix, we basically, as I mentioned, the national grid of Nepal is basically all hydro, 100% hydro. And we have shortage of energy, typically day shortage, seasonal shortage also. So we basically trying to convince government to integrate grid interconnection of grid solutions, be it a hydro or the solar. We are strengthening the system by connecting to the grid. New concept, everyone is working on that. Also, the Mr. Ahmed from Maldives also mentioned a quick solution could be battery storage, could be useful to Nepal. Also, we are exploring on that to have short-term storage capacity addition to the grid. That's battery storage. A daytime load support, basically from rooftop solar, industrial and commerce are basically encouraged, incentivized to some extent to have solar rooftop program. Also, we are developing, as we have this now federal structure working, we have 753 local government units working. So we have the policy to have PPP, my mini grids, for their own captive generation, and also to have some kind of income to develop local energy resources and connect to the grid and have some permanent income for their local units. The basic impact we want all from all our DRE is basically increasing the reliability of the electricity for industry and commerce. That also include the voltage regulation and stability. Many places we have this problem of voltage stability. Increase economic opportunity and jobs, because the first instance of supply is basically for the lighting load. So we have to increase the economic opportunity from the electricity. So that also comes from the distributed renewable energy systems. At least in the daytime, we can have surplus electricity to the activities. And also in some ways, we are still importing 25 to 30% energy in the dry season. So we have to reduce this and then increase our captive generation capacity. The big transition, big problem is, as I mentioned, we still have 93% energy to replace by electricity. So the main issues for Nepal is how to do the fuel transition, especially in electric cooking, electric mobility, waste to energy, pumped irrigation, industrial fuel switching, energy storage scheme, battery, pump hydro, green hydrogen, ammonia, all this. And also these financing modality to establish some sustainable energy challenge fund and encourage new and innovative idea on the fuel switching or energy transition. Basically, our main challenge is how to utilize the electricity, hydroelectricity, we're going to be generating more than our capacity of demand. So that is the main thing. And then and the challenge side also basically how to situationalize the policies and financing model for the fuel transition, especially using electricity in cooking, electric vehicle and industrial fuels transition are the main challenge for Nepal, as electricity is 100% renewable. So the challenge for Nepal is to use the renewable energy to have replace the other fuels heavily used in the country. That's already been explained, that still 93% energy is coming from imported non-renewable fuels and then non-sustainable conventional biomass. So the basic challenge is how to make policies and institution and financing model to act in these areas to have a fast track use of energy and replace these non-conventional energy system. There is very much clarity on the electricity access side. NEA is fully working on that and responsible for generation, transmission, distribution to the electricity supply. But when it comes to fuel switching, fuel from other fuels to the electricity, still there is a confusion on who should be the appropriate and the best way to focus on this arrangement. And on that switching side, when we talk about cooking and electric vehicle, there are still the question that reliability of electricity supply infrastructure is there. ADB and other development parts are very much helping on this, increasing the reliability of supply in the metropolitan city to make it more available, round-the-clock electricity reliability. So that's a technical challenge, basically, how to make it available and reliable for the use like cooking and electric vehicle, which are very much real time, and you have to have a reliable supply. And then in the case of Nepal, as we have heavily engaged to our size, the private sector investment in the electricity generation, electricity trade and regional complementary on the complementarity in generation and supply is a big issue for Nepal. Nepal is working heavily with India and Bangladesh. How can we make these complementarities on hydro, solar, and natural gas system in the region? So that's another big thing for days to come, as we may have the electricity production by 100% in every 3 to 5 years. That will definitely create a market problem to Nepal. And also, as Mr. Ahmed also mentioned, for a small system, distributed generation, sustainability, maintenance, and technological spare and other things are also big challenge. So these few things I would like to mention here. As you all know, this is a case study of Nepal. We are talking small things, and basically Nepal's problem in the days to come is to make the system reliable and upgrade it, and to convert the other fuels to electricity. And of course, the regional trade are the main issue on Nepal, as we are basically country blessed to have a lot of hydro. So our baseline is not a problem, but our baseline is compared with the cooking fuels comes from the biomass. So these are the main basic things I would like to share with you. And I will be happy to have more contribution in the discussion session. Thank you very much. Thank you for the time. Thank you, ADB, for this opportunity to share thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madhusudanji. So colleagues, I really like to thank all the speakers for sharing their thoughts and also the situation from their country or the organization they are working for. Madhusudanji, you can also remove your the slide, so stop sharing that slide. I think that will be good. Thank you so much. So colleagues, now we have about 10 minutes of time as well. We wanted to have a very detailed discussion on the Q&A, and then I have seen a lot of questions from the participants already. But in the interest of time, what I will do is I will go one by one of you, and then I will also share some of these questions we received from the from the participants. And then if you now you have also heard other speakers, and if you want to add anything from your side or any other observations, reactions, then please do so. Maybe I will give like 1 or 2 minutes to each of you, and then we can go for a conclusion. So now let me start with Dr. Mathur. There are basically 2 questions for you. One is you have mentioned about this blended risk mitigation facility, and you also mentioned that it will be for different countries. You'll have a different kind of instruments there. So if, one question there is that if you can elaborate a little bit more in terms of how would you choose for which menu to a particular country, or will you go with all this menu to a country, and how would you organize? So that's one. The second question is related to how ISA is supporting on the human resource development side of it, especially on the capacity building and so on. If you can also elaborate that one, that's very good. And ISA also had this program on the floating solar, and then especially a country like Maldives and others would also benefit a lot on this floating solar. And if you can also elaborate a little bit on where we are on that one, and especially on the cost side of it, if you know. So Dr. Mathur, over to you first, and then I will go to the other colleagues. You are on mute, Dr. Mathur. Yeah, now, okay, good.
Thank you very much, Chief. Very quickly, as far as the blended finance facility is concerned, this is really the fitting of what kind of instruments are used in the country will depend on the discussion between the investors on one side and the country stakeholders, including the government, on the other side. We see that we have a general understanding of what is seen as the major drawbacks which are coming out of the exercise. So, for example, given we are working for South Asia, which we hope we can expand into larger Asia as well. So we are beginning to have an understanding. It is that kind of understanding which will lead to what is the kind of risk mitigation facility which will provide the greatest benefit in pulling money into the country. So I'm sorry that there isn't a clear answer to this, but this is dependent on needs. The second is on capacity building. On capacity building, we provide training to people who are involved in the setting up and the design of the solar systems, both large-scale solar systems as well as productive solar systems. We also do it for example, bankers who review the projects for debt. We also provide it for policymakers and the grid regulators. Now, over the past 2 years of the pandemic, it has largely been done through web means. Today, there are something like 1,700 people who have gone through these training programs. But moving ahead, we would like to see how we can make more of these to be face-to-face training. We're also moving into training of technicians and providing some kind of certification through which they can be employed by the private sector. So this is work in preparation. We hope to launch that by the third quarter of this year. Floating solar is an area which is of great interest to us because of 2 things. One is, especially when you're talking of them being built in a reservoir behind a dam, it is not taking up land space. Second, there are already transmission lines from the dam itself to the load centers, and this electricity produced from the floating solar can go on that. So the issue of land, saving land resources, which is also true of developing country like Maldives, as was mentioned, is of great interest. And what we have done is we have helped in looking at the kinds of issues that are involved in floating solar in various parts of the world. We had a kind of it was not a training program, but a appreciation program, for the lack of a better word, so that people understand what are the kinds of issues involved that we did for Africa. We hope to do one for Asia very soon. And following that, we will look up into supporting countries as they decide to go for floating solar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. In the interest of time, let me move quickly to Anvesa. Anvesa, you have several questions, but let me choose the one which is, in my opinion, is probably most relevant for our session today. You have given kind of a framework for this RE integration. Now the question is, which option or which aspect will be good for a particular country? Let's say for India, how do we do it? And other countries like Nepal or other countries, how do we do that once? And then, and also linked with this question is about, how do we use kind of a regional cooperation and integration? Is a power trade related thing, as you also mentioned by Dr. Adhikari already from Nepal side. So how do you put that angle in this aspect of it? So Anvesa, very briefly, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeevan. The fortunate thing with country like India is that we're actually trying and putting a framework for all of those aspects that I put in the presentation. So it's not either or. But for some of the countries which are, still in their journey, over there, I would say that if we need to zero down upon one or two measures, battery storage is something that should be immediately looked upon because it doesn't depend on a lot of other things like presence of transmission or regulations. That's something that should be looked upon immediately because whether it is DRE systems, whether it is integration at generations, transmission or distribution level, it provides a lot of flexibility into the system. And the second thing I would say is to create capacities of the grid operators to be able to plan better. So the forecasting capability for renewables, forecasting capability for for the loads of the demand, these aspects become extremely important. So these are the two I will. These are the two aspects that I will prioritize. In terms of regional integration, India already has connectivity with a lot of neighboring countries. Of course, we have an ambitious program to connect in a wider framework and wider geographical framework under OSAWOG, which probably Dr. Ajay Mathur can speak about better. It does involve a lot of geopolitical challenges, which is why the regional economic cooperation and intergovernmental kind of dialogue is extremely necessary to take it forward. But it's not that it's not been tried and tested. India already has connectivity with Nepal, with Bhutan, Bangladesh, so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Anvesa. Now, Mr. Sim, there are some questions about Korea's experience on hydrogen. If you can very briefly mention, and then there is also a question on whether KEPCO is also doing wind in other countries in Southeast Asia, maybe Indonesia or in South Asia or other countries. Again, Mr. Sim, we have very limited time, just maybe 1 minute if you can summarize it, that we would appreciate that one. Thank you.
Actually, the green hydrogen is very early stage, so we have to overcome a lot of technical hurdles, challenges, and also we have to make a detailed framework for the industrial standard. So we actually KEPCO would like to start with the solar power first in the UAE, and then we will expand the scope of work and the region after the solar power. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Ahmad, I think one question that is for you is about this floating solar. I think Dr. Mathur also mentioned a little bit about ISA experience and their program also. But I think this floating solar, especially for the sea, large sea, big seas, deep seas, hasn't been demonstrated so far so well. Let's say. In the world, but you mentioned about this in lagoons and so on. There may be a kind of easier process or prospect there, and then you mentioned also about this cost. What are the? I mean, have you explored anything on this aspect, or are we inviting some people and partners to help you on this aspect? If you could clarify that one, that would be good. Very briefly.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jivan. Actually, there are some pilot projects on, installed on the lagoons, and also we are working with ADB in installing. The next project which we are starting with ADB will be on the ocean. Floating solar installed on the lagoons and the open sea. So we have conducted basic studies. And we actually want to get more assessments and more support from the agencies like ADB and ISA, especially. ISA being one of the think tank, I think, in this area. We need their support actually on how to efficiently utilize sea, because 99% of our space is sea. So we have only, I believe that our solution lies in the sea. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Dr. Madhusudan Adhikariji, one question for you is, of course, Nepal has a lot of hydro, and then which can be, used to meet a domestic demand, but also can be traded to India and also to Bangladesh. But there is always a question about the capacity in the transmission line constraint there. Any thinking that you have or Nepal has on building that transmission interconnection capacity there? You have only 1 minute, Madhusudan, then we can close. You are on mute.
Thank you very much, Jivanji. I think very shortly, of course, yeah, as I mentioned, we have a lot of generation potential coming in. And basically, the first route is from in Nepal to India. One 400 kV system is operating in Dalgibaran site. Similar 2-3 systems are under constructions, and hopefully Nepal also looking for, with the new regulation, to invite the international community and maybe the power exchange operators to come and build some transmission infrastructure, and also work on the power trading. So Nepal's policies are coming to be very open on the power trade, and that also include the construction of infrastructure, which is a bottleneck for now. So that's been already in the big discussion in Nepal. So hopefully this problem will be addressed nicely in the coming days. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I know it is a very short time, but I would really like to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Mathur, and all of you, all the speakers, and also the participants for joining this session. Given the limited time, of course, we couldn't touch upon each and every aspect of it, but this is, at least we were able to cover what is the situation right now, what are the issues and challenges, and how we can all work together in taking it forward there. And then I would like to really thank all of you for all your support and cooperation, and enjoy the other sessions in SF as well, and hope to see you in person soon. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Namaste.
Bye-bye.